The meaning and effect of individual or private absolution and general absolution. Maybe there are times that we have been asked, at your church, does the absolution given by the priest at the beginning of the Mass have the same meaning and effect as the absolution given by a priest when he hears someone's confession? We all know that it has been a debate in the church the issue on the private or individual absolution and general absolution in the sacrament of penance. Yes, the absolution which the priest gives as part of the penitential rite of Masses in the Catholic Church and the absolution given by a priest in the Roman Catholic confessional is the same sacrament. Absolution given at our Masses is called general absolution, while the absolution given in the confessional is called individual absolution. But both are valid administrations of the sacrament of penance within the Catholic faith tradition. The Roman Catholic also uses both of these forms of administration of reconciliation. However, general absolution is seldom used, and when it is used, the penitent still have to make an individual confession of the sins. Here are some of the biblical sources that talks or mentioned about the practice of absolution, both individual and in general. In its historical background, what is absolution, by the way? Absolution is an integral part of the sacrament of penance in Roman Catholicism. And there is also a use of a sacramental formula. So this is the current formula after the liturgical reforms of 1970. What is the essential part of the formula? So this is the essential part of the formula. I absolved you. What is private or individual absolution? As I've mentioned a while ago, private or individual absolution is the absolution given in the confessional. It is the personal reception of forgiveness of sins from God given to the pastors, the priest, or fellow Christian. Through individual confession and absolution, he also comes to speak a word of forgiveness. What is general absolution? In the Code of Canon Law 961, absolution cannot be imparted in general manner to many penitents at once without previous individual confession unless there is a danger of death and there is a grave necessity. In CCC number 1482, it also talks about the practice of individual and general absolution. Also in the apostolic letter of John Paul II, Misericordiae Dei, after hearing the views of Venerable Brother Cardinal in charge of the dicasteries of the Roman Curia and reaffirming Catholic doctrine on the sacrament of penance and reconciliation, as summarized in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, he said, I decree the following. So here is the ordinances are to remind all the ministers of the sacrament of penance that the universal law of the Church applying Catholic doctrine in this area has established that first, individual and integral confession and absolution are the sole ordinary means by which the faithful, conscious of grave sin, are reconciled with God and with the Church. And therefore, all those whom it is required by the virtue of their ministry in the care of the soul are obliged to ensure that the confessions of the faithful entrusted to them are heard when they reasonably ask, and that they are given the opportunity to approach individual confession on days and at times set down for their convenience. In conclusion, In the sacrament of penance, private or individual absolution or general absolution are both forms of administering the sacrament of penance. They have the same spiritual effect as long as the penitent is both forms has the proper spiritual dispositions for receiving the sacrament of penance. But then again, even general absolution is used. The penitent still have to make an individual confession of sins. It also supported in the CCC 19 number 1497. Also, in the apostolic letter of Pope John Paul II in the form of Propreo, and of course, in the Code of Canon Law Chapter 1 in the celebration of the sacrament. As a reflection, our universal calling as Christians is to be holy. That is why we always exert efforts to make ourselves better and we strive not to commit sin if possible. But then, human as we are very prone to sin. Good thing is that the church continue its mission to proclaim God's salvific action, and one of it is the sacraments which he entrusted to the church authority. One of my professors said, "The fullness of the means of God's grace rests on the Catholic Church, maybe because we have the sacraments." Sacraments of penance is the sacrament which gives us the opportunity to examine our conscience and confess our sins and receive absolution. As a Catholic, it is very important to confess our sins to the priest and receive absolution because this is one way of freeing ourselves from sin. In this particular subject matter, I've learned the importance of knowing the effect of both private or individual absolution and general absolution. For me, as a faithful Catholic, I've been practicing the individual or private absolution ever since the first time I received it. I completely feel the sacredness of the sacrament of penance if I am receiving it privately. And also I feel God's presence and I feel God's mercy and forgiveness. Whether our sins are absolved privately or in general, what matters most is our sincerity in confessing our sins to God through His hierarchy in the Church, and of course, our sincerity of asking forgiveness for committing those sins. God is a merciful God. He always finds ways to make His people be closer to Him. And receiving the sacrament of penance is not just being reconciled to God, but also we are reconciled in the Church. Thank you and God bless.